Hello and welcome to the President's Podcast right here on the record with the Ohio Senate. The views the news excludes. I'm John Fortney, the Director of Communication with the Senate Republican Caucus. That's the majority caucus in the Ohio Senate. Great to have back on the program after several months since last year, Caitlin Sutherland. She is the Executive Director for Americans for Public Trust out of Washington, D.C., which is a watchdog group keeping an eye on the money, watching where the money goes, the money trails, specifically dark money. Caitlin, great to have you back on the program.
Well, thanks for having me back.
You know, one of the very interesting things that we've been seeing is what the media likes to cover as just grassroots protesting every weekend at the State House, protesters at Tesla dealerships here in Columbus, Ohio, and around the country. But really, this is far from a grassroots effort, is it not? It's really organized by an organization called Indivisible. What is that?
Yeah, well, as you pointed out, the funniest thing when we see these protests pop up across the country, the immediate reaction is, wow, this is some organic grassroots event. There, all these groups and all these people, they're coming together with a common complaint, and common action. But when you take a step back, you realize that it's anything but. We saw this with the anti-Israel protests, a few months and years ago, and you took a look on the college campuses and you realize, how do they have all these matching tents? Do you remember that? They had these matching tents around campus.
High dollar tents, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
They weren't cheap.
No, not at all. And you realize that these so-called organic protests, whether they be about Elon Musk or, their pro-Palestinian forces, that they're often organized by outside left-wing dark money. And again, that is what we are seeing here. And the group called Indivisible is the main group spearheading these protests across the country. They're anything but small donor funded. They're anything but organic and anything but, this grassroots movement. In fact, they are funded by left-wing billionaires as well as foreign billionaires. And that is what is happening around the country.
I saw where it's $7.6 million came from the Open Society. What is the Open Society?
The Open Society is the foundation associated with George Soros. So again, when you take a look at what Indivisible is protesting, and then take a look at who is funding them, you realize that it's George Soros, a left-wing billionaire, is giving all this money to Indivisible to lead these protests around town. So at the same time that they're decrying billionaires in government, they're ironically funded by billionaire George Soros, who funds pretty much every lefty and liberal nonprofit and progressive cause around Washington, D.C. And across the country.
Here is a little printout that I printed out from the Indivisible Central Ohio website. It's not just Indivisible Ohio, it's Indivisible Central Ohio. And I found this very interesting because, again, this is always being sold as these are just real people who don't like Trump. They have Trump Derangement Syndrome. There's something they're always elitist, entitled, and offended about. But this is right off their calendar. I mean, it's a fancy website. So when you look up Saturday the 26th, which is tomorrow, we're recording this on Friday, here's what's going on, by the way. Defending Democracy protest, Delaware, Ohio, from noon to 1. Chasing down Kerry. I thought that was very interesting terminology, chasing down an Ohio congressman. That's in Columbus. Then weekly protest at Easton Tesla dealership, 4:30 to 5:30. I mean, they're so well funded. Not only do they pay people to show up at the Ohio State House and to chase down congressmen and basically threaten them. I mean, Congressman Ruley talked a little bit about that last week on the podcast regarding the town halls that are being organized by this very same group, clearly. But Caitlin, they have the money to try to shut down Tesla dealerships and at a larger scale, try to shut down Tesla as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. When you take a look at all these different events, I mean, they're happening in Ohio, they're happening in Washington, D.C., they're happening across the country, and you take a look at the logistics that have to happen behind scenes to orchestrate this event, it takes some serious money. A few weeks ago, there was a huge rally in downtown DC, and there was just buses and buses, these very expensive charter buses, bringing these people in. And sometimes these protests happen on work days. Often people wonder, it's like, don't you have a job to go
Right,
to?
they don't.
No, yeah.
They
Well,
don't.
they either don't have a job, or there's also been allegations that they are being paid to show up to protest. And so it's a well-funded effort, again, funded by, these left-wing billionaires, George Soros being one of them. Also, Indivisible is founded by one of my favorite foreign billionaires to talk about, by the name of Hans-Jörg Wyss. Your listeners might remember him as far as, his money ending up in Ohio.
The
And here it is,
1630
it's ending up in Ohio again. Foreign money influencing Ohio, influencing these rallies, causing this disruption, these so-called, these town halls around these congressional districts. And it's also preventing the congressmen and women from doing their job if they're getting interrupted by these protests that are only meant to cause chaos.
Right. It's conjuring fake news is what it is. There's a spinoff as well to Indivisible Central Ohio, or Indivisible Ohio. It's called 50/50 and then the number one. What is that? Just another organization connected to George Soros and Indivisible? It's another protest organization.
Yeah, I haven't. That one is a new one for me. But often what we see with these so-called, these new groups, oftentimes they like to make it seem like it is a unique organization, that this is a standalone organization put together by, these, like a mom and pop outlet. But what we realize is they're often trade names. So I'm not sure if in that particular instance, but what we often see with these protests and who's leading the charge is that usually it's one group. Often there's a group by the name of the 1630 Fund, and they operate under many different trade names. And when you operate under trade names, it makes it seem like many different groups are coming together, and you can say, oh my gosh, take a look. There's half a dozen, a few dozen, all these individual groups coming together, and it makes it seem like they have a united front and they're united against a certain, policy, but it's really just traces back to one group. So
It's all the same. They all know each other. It's the
all
same
the
amount
same
of
thing.
progressive
And that way,
leftists.
they all
Yeah.
share a bank account, and they just make individual websites, and they have a graphic designer, spin up some new logo. So today they can be, families over billionaires, but tomorrow they can be healthcare voter. Next week, they're going to be something else. But really, oftentimes it's one group, and they do it on purpose to make it look like they have this traction to support whatever crazy cause they're supporting.
Last fall, and we'll talk about this, about citizens, not politicians. Perfect example of what you were just talking about. I like to call them political outcomes over people, but we're going to get back to that because you were talking about Hans-Jörg Wyss and the 1630 Fund. But this 5051, which is connected to Indivisible apparently, and I was talking about the protests at Tesla dealerships where they stand right there in the driveway on the sidewalk. They get out in the street, they disrupt traffic. Here's what the 5051 website talks about. And it says DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, which we talked a lot about with Congressman Rulli last week, DOGE would not exist without the overwhelming influence of Elon Musk's exorbitant wealth. Today, he's the richest man in the world, and over 60% of his wealth comes from shares in Tesla. The best way to personally resist his influence is to completely and permanently boycott Tesla. So here's the just real head scratcher. Funny, kind of. It's just so funny. It's like comedic. Do not buy a Tesla. Sell any Tesla products you own. Do not use Tesla charging stations. Sell Tesla stock. Write reviews against the brand and spread the word. If you know someone with a Tesla or hear that someone is considering buying one, try to convince them not to. And you know what? Caitlin, I get the feeling that the reason why they're going after him with such a vengeance is not just because of Doge, waste, fraud, and abuse. It's because it is interrupting and intercepting their money laundering operation to non-governmental organizations, which these are, that then oddly, some of those funds seem to make their way back to the Democratic National Committee. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and also what's happening is we are seeing the violence against Tesla owners, as well as destroying cars, keying private property. This is a total this effort that's coming from the left with these protests. They're taking it so far that it's not just about voicing your opposition, which is absolutely fine
Sure.
to do. We welcome civil discourse, but we're also seeing this violence. Again, like we saw with these, which actually they're still going on, these protests around college campuses, and supportive of the pro-Palestinian effort. It's so problematic and it's so dangerous when it leads to violence. And that's also what we're seeing coming out of these protests being funded like Indivisible, that they have taken it so far to cause this destruction. It's horrible to see what is going on around the United States right now.
Right, and it's treated like it's legitimate. Yeah, I mean, it's totally organized by the far progressive socialist left. And you were mentioning about the, allegations of paid protesting. If you go to the Indivisible website, we noticed that there's a section about, and Indivisible will reimburse you up to $200 for cardboard and posters and these kinds of things, which is really stupid. They might as well just come out and say, we'll give each of you $200, because all those posters are already there. Some people may bring in their own, but often they're already on a van, they're on a U-Haul, they're already ready to go. And the other thing about, what we're seeing, the vandalization of Teslas and Tesla dealerships, on these same websites, it talks about if you're arrested, do this. I mean, they actually have legal teams ready to go. And of course, we know who the main lawyer for these organizations are, right? Mark Elias.
Yeah, it's so coordinated. Again, when you see that it's not just this one particular effort, when they're saying, oh, here's how to respond in this situation, we're seeing this across all the left and all this, counter protests that they're running. Hey, here's how to evade ICE. And these are, again, these are always well-funded organizations that are giving talking points to not obey the law, to be disruptive, to how to evade, an immigration enforcement agency. It just shows how well funded and how well orchestrated it can be when you have unlimited money, when it's coming from left-wing billionaires as well as foreign billionaires as well. They're funded, millions of dollars a year, and they act like they've got this shoestring budget, this grassroots organization, but they have completely weaponized their liberal dark money, and they're causing chaos across the United States.
Yeah, what is the goal? You talk about chaos across the United States, and I know that when you and I have talked about Hans-Jörg Wyss before in the 1630 Fund, he really came out publicly and said that he wanted to basically reinvent the foundation of the United States of America, and he's not even an American citizen. I mean, you work in D.C., you follow the money. What do you think their goal is? Is it to rewrite the foundational documents and principles of the United States?
What we've seen is they're clearly very unhappy with the Trump administration, and they are obviously very unhappy with what Doge is doing, despite, Americans by and large agreeing that government spending and government waste is out of control, and we need to rein in the government spending. We need to rein in all of this waste that is occurring. People are supportive of it. However, what they're seeing is that when it's their certain liberal pet project that maybe is losing funding or rightfully so being defunded. Because again, if they're non-governmental organizations, why are they so dependent on this government funding? You are seeing, these massive pushbacks to policies coming out of a new administration. And as you said, when you take a look at who are the groups funding them, they are individuals who are very supportive of enacting a liberal agenda. And that obviously does not fit with the current administration. Previously, we've outlined that Hans-Jörg Wyss, a foreign billionaire from Switzerland, who is the main funder to many of these pet projects across Washington, D.C., he's given Indivisible almost $7 million. That means that Indivisible is receiving foreign funds and then turning around and protesting at town halls of congressmen. And, as you said, Hans-Jörg Wyss has admitted it's his goal to reinterpret the American Constitution in the light of progressive politics. And it sure looks like this money ending up in Indivisible is one way to do that, to fund the resistance movement that is, in opposition to the Trump administration. And, hopefully, I think they think that all this chaos and disturbance that they're causing is going to be the change agent in Washington, D.C. But it's just funny thinking that they think that their actions, could bring about change when really it's just bringing about disruption.
Yeah, I mean, if all the people that voted for Trump and the Electoral College and popular vote landslide in November showed up these protests, it would just be a groundswell that would overshadow the people that turn out at the Tesla dealerships and even at state houses here at the state house here in Ohio and around the country. We were talking too a little bit about how these town halls. I just wanted to read a quick paragraph from Congressman Rulli, who actually had his column posted in the Canton Repository, legacy media outlet, a Gannett-owned paper, because as you and I have also talked in the past, we're seeing these same dark money dollars starting up so-called newsrooms, like the Capitol Journal in Columbus, Ohio, which is part of State's Newsroom. And you can read some of our stories on the views the news excludes on the record. All you have to do is go to ohiosenate.gov, click on news, and we're the very first drop down right there. Here's what Congressman Rulli said. Don't believe dishonest town hall campaign. In recent days, I've received requests from multiple media outlets misrepresenting my accessibility to constituents and questioning the work I've done to represent them. These reporters refuse to acknowledge the inorganic nature of these protests and choose to misconstrue activist propaganda as authentic civil concern. It's time to set the record straight. And as a 25-year veteran of broadcast news, mainly covering politics, I shudder to see some of the coverage these days. And I'm not sure, it doesn't take very much of a deep dive, 2 mouse clicks, and you can see who is funding Indivisible, or you can at least see what they are. Where have we gone off the rails with legacy media?
Oh gosh, I mean, as you just said, State's Newsroom, they're all receiving the same funding. We've got George Soros propping up a fake news outlet called Courier Newsroom. And we have Hans-Jörg Wyss using his foreign money to prop up State's Newsroom. And what they're doing is very deceptive. And it goes back to using, let's say, the 1630 fund, popping up with all these unique, independent sounding organizations to give the illusion that it is, this grassroots fueled effort. And again, what we're seeing with State's Newsroom is they have, so-called papers in 50 states, and they are very well named newspapers where if you just take a quick look, you would have no idea that it's part of the fake newsroom that is State's Newsroom, again, funded by foreign money. So why would, let's say, if you're Hans-Jörg Wyss and you're funding State's Newsroom, and then you're also funding Indivisible, the media is never going to write the truth that says, oh, well, the same individual who's funding me is also funding this protest and they're doing bad things. And when you follow the money, it really starts to make sense to what this, particularly foreign dark money can buy. And they're not being honest and they're not covering it. And, I commend Congressman Ruley for, fighting back and trying to shed the light on what is happening in these town halls, because more needs to be done to expose the funding sources, to expose that it's not necessarily an organic effort. And as we said, that, they're paying individuals, to show up to cause this chaos around.
Right. I mean, it really is the worst of advocacy journalism when you advocate for your own far left, progressive left, dark money interest that seeks to undermine the fabric of the country. We talked to you last year about dark money and issue campaigns. Of course, Ohio was successful in prohibiting, banning, passing a law, much to the fight and chagrin of the State House Democrats, saying, you already can't use dark money in a candidate campaign. We just wanted to make sure that you couldn't use it in an issue campaign. And why in the world was it so important for them to try to fight against this? Well, because they wound up, Caitlin, spending $40 million, 99.7% of which came from out of state. And we know the first batch of it, the $6 million, came from the 1630 fund.
Yeah, when you say what Ohio accomplished last year, you say, well, let's not use foreign money to fund our ballot issue campaigns. It is such a simple policy proposal. It's common sense. And public polling has showed that over 80% of Americans support a policy proposal like that. However, as you saw, there was so much pushback in Ohio, but we are so thankful that legislative leaders in Ohio got it across the finish line and that it was signed into law. Obviously, Mark Elias immediately turned around and sued your state, trying to stop enforcement of the law. But fortunately, the Sixth Circuit ruled that it can go into effect because in that ruling, they said that Ohio has a compelling interest to make sure that foreign funding is not coming into your state. And since Ohio really led the nation in enacting that first comprehensive and strong ban on direct and indirect funding of using foreign funding in these ballot issue fights, many other states have followed in Ohio's way. And since then, this year, 5 states have actually passed similar laws. We've seen laws get enacted in Kansas, Wyoming, Kentucky, Arkansas was just signed into law this week, really showing the momentum, in Indiana as well, showing the momentum that started in Ohio, that rejected the idea that foreign nationals should be able to fund these state ballot issue campaigns. It was such an important law that Ohio stepped up and got passed, and we're glad to see that all these other states are following suit as well.
On our online newsroom, on the record, the views the news excludes. And Caitlin, you probably can't see it here, but I'll hold it up. And this is something we had a lot of fun with after certainly the defeat of State Issue 1. But I wrote this story. It's called Here Lies Gerrymandering. $37 million worth of lies buried beneath. It's actually $40 million now, we know. But Issue 1, special interests, coastal dark money, D.C. swamp monsters. And the voters of Ohio soundly rejected that. But those swamp monsters, that coastal money, the Hanjorg visas, 1630s of the world, they don't seem to be going away, because I thought I read a story as well that George Soros was basically turning the operation over to his son. Is that what you've heard?
That's absolutely right. There was an expose this week that was a profile all about Alex Soros, who is the son of George Soros, the heir apparent of all this money. And so, yes, Alex Soros is the new leader of the Open Society Foundation. And so it is now his job to hand out money to the lefty groups across the country and in DC. So, while you can turn off, one area, let's say foreign funding of state ballot issues, it's still legal to use foreign money to fund a group like Indivisible. So sometimes it can feel like a whack-a-mole game, like, oh my gosh, we just shut off foreign funding of our ballot issue campaigns. And now you're telling me that foreign money is coming into Indivisible and they're causing chaos at these town halls across Ohio. There are many different foreign influence loopholes on the books, and we're working to close them all. But when it comes to these outside forces and the left-wing dark money, that yes, they have a lot of money and they are well organized. But the thing is, they don't necessarily have great policy visions to implement across the country. And we saw that, their policy positions were defeated. And here they are again, trying their best to use their foreign dark money to enact an agenda. But I know Ohioans are smarter than that. And we know that they appreciate knowing where the money is coming from. We saw that with issue 1, and we're seeing it again when these protests are popping up around town. They're smarter, and they know that it's out of state and foreign dark money funding Indivisible, and that more attention needs to be drawn on that, and we're glad to talk about that today.
I saw in 2024, there was a statistic reported on my research that 1630 actually spent $100 million in 2024. $100 million. Well, no wonder that they can fund these operations state to state and try to attack constitutions and basically take away rights that exist. And one of the things, too, when we're talking about George Soros, as part of the Issue 1 campaign last year, we talked about the $6 million that the 1630 Fund donated. And then there was $2 million from Article 4, that's a DC organization. And then isn't the Tides Foundation out of California a Soros-linked group? Because it gave $2 million to the Issue 1 campaign. Isn't that a Soros group? Because it seems like they're all over the place, and they're basically little rabbit holes where they store money when they need it.
It's Group A gives to B, gives to C. They're all connected, but yes, Tides. The Tides Network does operate out of California. They have under many different names. They've got the Tides Center, Tides Advocacy, Tides Foundation, and they are also funded by George Soros. So we are seeing, pop-up groups around town funding the same initiative. And unfortunately, Ohio's not alone. We saw that with ballot initiatives in Montana and ballot initiatives in Arizona, Nevada, Florida. All these liberal outside groups get together and they just are pouring tens of millions of dollars into these concentrated efforts. But fortunately, those efforts were defeated in Ohio.
Somebody watching this might say, well, I'm really glad that Ohio banned dark money and banned foreign contributions coming into issue campaigns. Can't we do that at the national level? I guess that probably is quite an improbability after Citizens United, would it not be?
When it comes to foreign money, there actually has been progress on the federal level. It obviously is going to move much more slowly than the state level. As I mentioned, 5 states this year were able to enact legislation banning the foreign funding of ballot issues. Whereas on the federal level, that legislation still needs to be introduced. But legislation was introduced during last Congress, and they were able to advance it out of committee. I had the opportunity to testify twice last year in front of Congress about why it's so important to enact these reforms on the federal level as well. It is completely legal for the federal level to take action and to restrict foreign funding of these ballot initiatives and of other initiatives around town. But as we've seen, there are a lot of competing priorities on the federal level, and that's why it was so great to see Ohio take it into their own hands and quickly pass legislation that closes foreign influence loophole, and now other states are following in Ohio's footsteps as well.
Yeah, I think members of the legislature and the people across Ohio, reasonable people, would understand that, gee, it sort of seems like our state is under attack, and I think you can also apply that the United States is also under attack on campaign finance and all these foreign funds, hundreds of millions of dollars that are pouring in to try to unravel and undermine state constitutions and even our own United States Constitution.
Yeah, absolutely. When individuals are educated about where this foreign money is coming from and where it ends up, it's ending in Ohio, Florida, Missouri, Montana. That is why we have seen this sweeping momentum across the country and states fighting back against this foreign interference. And the more that states learn about the problem and that they are able to regulate it, we have seen them step up and take action and fight back. The fact that foreign money can fund policy fights and ballot issue campaigns, it just offends you as an American. I mean, these are simple things. By and large, everyone agrees if you're only U.S. citizens should be able to vote in elections. Why is it that, if you're not a U.S. citizen, but you can fund these different electoral vehicles? I mean, it is a huge problem, and we're glad to shine the light on what is happening, because yeah, it just offends you as an American when you see what is happening and you learn who is funding it.
Yeah, the people of Ohio 2 years ago passed a constitutional amendment absolutely specifying that to vote in Ohio, you have to be a resident of the state of Ohio and a United States citizen, which seems like that's common sense. But it also, on the flip side, that is exactly what the progressive left is fighting against. They're saying, yes, non-residents and non-Americans should be able to vote in your elections. And, oh, we're going to go advocate for cutthroat killers and gang members who weren't even supposed to be here in the first place. We're in the country illegally. We're going to go advocate for their supposed rights and forget your rights as a citizen. It's really astounding. I mean, to me, let them keep doing that. That's going to hurt them election after election. But I mean, when you have that kind of money, your cognitive dissonance can be first and foremost, and they just seem to believe what they want to believe, and we're going to go protest anything that we want to.
What we're seeing, these are a bunch of 80-20 issues, right?
Mhm.
And time again, as you say, well, it's simple. Only Americans should be able to vote. It's simple. Only Americans should be able to donate to ballot issue campaigns, and 80-20 issues. And time again, we are seeing the left fall on the wrong side of that. And they are using their funding to progress, to push a progressive and, quite frankly, an unpopular agenda that can, borderline on extremist policies.
Yes, it's un-American, and I wonder often if they think we have unlimited funds. We'll continue to spend and chip away and chip away and maybe get a win here and chip away some more until finally we compromise the dam and we get a flood of what we want. And then we can get our own candidates in and we will have reshaped the country that way.
Well, they certainly have. They are more well-funded than the right. Time and time again, we have seen that the left has decried dark money in politics, despite them being the overall beneficiaries. Year after year and election after election, we have seen that dark money on the left, they have been out, they're outspending the dark money on the right. And so when they have these billionaires like George Soros and foreign billionaires like Hans-Jörg Wyss, it can feel like they have unlimited money, but that doesn't mean that they're using it wisely, right? I don't think it's wise, to encourage a group of people to protest a Tesla dealership or even key a car. So we have to keep that in mind, that while they may be better funded, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily executing better ideas. And again, if you're on the wrong side of these 80-20 issues, you're going to see problems for your organizational efforts down the road.
Right on down to threats of violence, right?
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
chase down a congressman, right? That's what it says on the Indivisible calendar. I want to say thank you very much for joining us again, Caitlin. Caitlin Sutherland, who is the Executive Director of Americans for Public Trust from Washington, D.C., a financial watchdog group. Stay in touch with us. We really appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.